Before we get started today, let me give you guys a heads up. We're not going to be showing any graphic pictures, but the content of today's live stream is not necessarily child-friendly, so tell the kids, leave the room, maybe listen to it with your earbuds in, something like this. It's up to your discretion. I'm not going to tell you how to raise your kids. So, with that being said, let's get started. Tell your kids to leave the room. Satan might be in charge of your church. This is a heavy topic, and I don't relish bringing it to YouTube, but I think that we need to be aware of these things, and that there are things that need to be said that aren't being said by many people. So it's part of my niche. So we're gonna talk about some crazy stuff tonight. If Satan is in charge of your church, if the Illuminati owns your church, what are the signs you should be looking for? Shouldn't we just focus on the positive parts of the Bible, the encouraging parts of the Bible, the uplifting parts of the Bible, or is there a lot to the Bible that we're ignoring? What does this even have to do with the Bible? This kind of a horrible subject. What does this horrible subject matter have to do with the Bible? And what does it have to do with the Bible translation controversy? And if what is reported is truly going on, how do we defeat it? We're going to talk about that tonight. But first, I hate to break this to you, but there is a conspiracy behind the modern Bible translation controversy, which is undermining Christianity and our civilization at this very moment. My name is Joseph Armstrong, and welcome to the Bible Version Conspiracy. We are starting a search engine that is going to deal with the exposing this conspiracy, this Bible version conspiracy. Questions about the Bible's infallibility, the King James Bible's infallibility, and its supernatural character. If you'd care to join us, hit that subscribe button down below. And if you want to join us on a deeper level, there's a link down in the description to our Co-conspirator program. You guys can enjoy some special perks and check those out at our Buy Me a Coffee page. Like I said, links in the description. It is our co-conspirators who make live streams like this and everything else that we do possible. And they know who they are. And we would like to thank them for being awesome. Stick around for the end of tonight's video because it's going to keep getting weirder and weirder as we explore satanic ritual abuse. Like I said, this isn't a subject for children. If you're listening to it and you're sensitive to these topics, maybe you shouldn't listen. We're not showing any graphic images, like I've already mentioned, but it is not a friendly subject. So, that being said, let's jump right in. Due to the subject matter of satanic ritual abuse, we advise not watching or listening to this with your kids. This episode is made as a public service. Like I said, I don't relish this topic. More than likely, SRA is in your city, your community, your life. So please pay close attention to what you hear tonight. Our intention is not to start a witch hunt. There have been too many witch hunts in history. The whole satanic panic originated with some books, some memories that people brought forward, and it ended up leading to a lot of unjust accusations. But you can almost be guaranteed that the real people that were actually doing what was reported to be being done didn't actually suffer for it. There were, I think, about 80 convictions out of the entire satanic panic and hundreds of accusations thrown back and forth. But I don't know all the stats on the satanic panic. I've only briefly perused them this week in preparation for this live stream. Our intention is not to start a witch hunt, but as we will see, there were a lot of them in history, and there's a good reason for them, in my opinion. And tonight we're also going to try to keep away from vocal fry, which is when you go like this, and if you breathe all the way out and say, hello, that's vocal fry, and I need to stop doing that. I need to get some air behind what I say and not have all of the crackling and stuff like bacon sizzling on a grill. Add more energy to this kind of stuff. I appreciate the person who called that out last time, and moving forward, we're going to try to cut out some of that stuff. So 7 episodes in out of hopefully many in the future. It's a good thing that we're getting started now. So, but it's going to be hard to have energy during a subject like this, I'll tell you that. Our intention is not to start a witch hunt, but as we'll see, there are a lot of them in history, and there's a good reason for it. Abuse does not have to be satanic in order to be serious, by the way. So, abuse comes in many forms, and many of these signs that we're going to be talking about tonight from the back, Appendix 2 of this book by Bill Schneblin, Lucifer Dethroned, they're going to be indicative of other types of abuse as well. So if you see them in yourself, you see them in your family, you see them in your church, stuff like this, we're not saying by any means, and Bill Schneblin makes this very clear, we are not saying that if you see 2 of these signs or 3 of these signs or even 1 of these signs that, oh, definitely you're dealing with satanic ritual abuse and it's time to call the MK Ultra hotline. We're not saying that. What we are saying is that when you start noticing a whole bunch of these things adding up and it starts getting suspicious, don't shrug it off. That's what we're saying. Shouldn't we just focus on the positive, though? Shouldn't Joseph just be getting on YouTube and we should instead be doing a Bible study in Philippians. That's what we should be doing. It's a good thing. I'm not downplaying that. It is a good thing. But a better question is not, shouldn't we be focusing on, spreading the gospel and other things like this? Shouldn't we just keep our heads down, keep pressing forward, keep our noses to the grindstone? Instead of that, a better question might be, if this stuff is truly happening, how can we keep ignoring it and enjoying our Bible studies and our fried chicken dinners and everything else like this, when there are many that are feasting themselves among us without fear? Obviously, and without even a fear of God, because that's where the beginning of wisdom is. And if you don't fear God, there can be a lot of problems. That's actually kind of the root of Luciferianism, Satanism, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of the root of it, isn't it? Obviously, we don't want to focus too much on it, but it needs to stop. And prayer and an educated Christian public and educated public in general are the best weapons against it. What does this even have to do with the Bible? Well, it has everything to do with the Bible, especially the parts we don't read anymore. Read the major prophets, read the minor prophets sometime. Learn about the bloodshed, the children, the Molech stuff, all of those different things. The darkness that Israel was in, the darkness that comes during the tribulation period. There's so much that we don't listen to when it comes to the Bible because it's more obscure, it's more negative, and we don't spend time with it. We've been taught that the prophecies in it are from 100 years, hundreds and thousands of years ago, and there's nothing in them for us today. We just take little inspirational verses out of them where God is trying to persuade them to return to Him, and we just put them on coffee mugs. That's sad. Obviously, don't focus too much on it, but it needs to stop, and prayer and a well-educated public are the best weapons against it. It has everything to do with the Bible, especially the parts we don't read anymore, like the major prophets. It will make you think twice about going into the horsewoman's basement where the dead are, like it talks about in Proverbs. Was it just an allegory, or did Solomon see something that haunted him? This information is not just to get a dark buzz, and it can. Listening to this kind of stuff can result in, like, oh, what is it? Not necessarily just like a dark buzz, like a dark rise or whatever. And this isn't just to get a dark buzz and then carry on with our lives. This information is to make you aware of your surroundings. As one youth pastor experienced, when a little girl from your church tells you about her home life, who will you turn to? Will you be ready? We'll mention this little girl in a little bit. What does this have to do with the modern Bible version controversy? Hazardous materials relates to it. I am not positive. I just had this thought today, but I think possibly the life of Peter Ruckman may also tie into this. Chapter 15 of this book, Jack the Ripper's New Testament, the chapter called The Rothschild's Bible, which I am definitely looking forward to getting into. We're not going to do it tonight, but I'm looking forward to it greatly. It makes you think, and they make similar connections, these two books. Hazardous Materials, Hazardous Materials, and Jack the Ripper's New Testament. Both of the links down in the description. They both tie in. Gail Ripplinger mentions once a suspect in the Jack the Ripper cases, which would be, I forget the guy's name that she was tying that to. But Nigel Graddon writes on Jack the Ripper more extensively, and he believes that it was actually a group of people, not just a single Ripper. So I've started the book, and it looks like it's going to be very interesting. It makes you think now this ties back to the New Order of Barbarians. It makes you consider who is actually going to be helping them, because Richard Day mentioned that far from the church actually opposing their revisions of the Bible that would help bring in the New World religion, he said, far from that, they're going to be helping us do it. So it makes you wonder who in Christianity is going to be helping them. Are the King James only people going to be helping them? Are there people in King James only churches that are going to be helping them? Or is it just a bunch of kids that are fresh from college that are being taught things by their professors, and the professors are helping, and they're helping the children, the kids, the college people. They're training them to help as well. I don't know how it all plays out. Right now, we're just theorizing. But the theories give us a place to start. And that's where we are. We're only on episode 7, guys. This is going to go on for a long time, Lord willing. Okay. Consider how much abuse, thinking of the people who might be helping them, think of how much abuse and infidelity goes on among us in Christianity, and not just Christianity, how much abuse goes on under the banner of the IFB. One of, even the new IFB, I don't know what's going on there. One of Steven Anderson's own kids has kind of been disowned by them, fascinated with Nazism, sees them as the good guys. I'm not sure how much MK Ultra ties in with that, but I know that the modern secreted Nazi movement, which is very prevalent still in America and South America, is very tied to MK Ultra. So I'm suspicious, especially with just that one kid turning out apparently so different from his siblings. Just, like I said, just ideas. Steven Anderson, if you see this, thank you so much for watching. I don't agree with you on everything, but I appreciate a lot of what you do. Just saying. Okay. Oh, and by the way, just kind of an interesting note. FBI, IFB. Weird. The IFB also remains the biggest promoters of KJV onlyism. Is this because it's popular? King James onlyism is popular among the IFB community because it just, it just registers well with them? Is it because it's a great guise where you have the holy Christian people, the best, the most soul winning in the world, apparently, and that's a great cover. Oh, and King James onlyism, we'll put that on there too. Then that way nobody'll suspect. Or does it serve a purpose? Does King James onlyism serve a purpose for the darkness in our midst? Those that Jude mentions that feed themselves in our feasts of charity without fear. There's only a couple of things that I can think of that it may serve. First, it's going to be kind of a gatekeeper to questioning authority. So you have a bunch of kids being raised in a certain mindset, and they are taught about the final authority of the Bible, and a lot of the time just the final authority of the pastor, which is absolutely ludicrous. And you're not supposed to question that authority. And if you have people that, a lot of the time, and it's really sad, in the independent fundamental Baptist movement, there is a lot of anti-educational sentiment with them. It is a virtue to not consider information, to not educate yourself, to not listen to different things. And that obviously gets pushed back against people that want to think for themselves It creates a lot of atheists. It creates a lot of Christians that are just like, I completely reject all of that nonsense. And that whole King James onlyism thing, it is the least logical, stupid, uneducated thing in history. So we have a lot of people that are intelligent and are willing to think outside the box, leaving that group and leaving a whole bunch of people that won't and are too afraid to learn and to question things there in the fold, guarded by the wolf. There's one other possibility that I thought of for the first time this week. Rosicrucians are accused of editing the Bible. They have apparently, according to some people, and even Nigel Gradden believes this apparently, that Francis Bacon and other assorted Rosicrucians actually put codes and secret meanings into the Bible more than there ever were in any cathedral. So, if that's the case, and you have a bunch of King James only people who are protesting vehemently, don't touch anything in the King James. This is just me thinking out loud. I don't think this is a possibility. It could be a possibility. I don't think that it's actually the thing. But if it turns out being a thing, you're going to hear about it. What if that's why King James onlyism is here, to keep those things in there without even updating archaic words, and not even the consideration of updating archaic words? Hey, what do you think? I don't know. I'm sitting here and questioning everything that I can because of what I've seen of KJV only arguments. A lot of the time they're screwed up. A lot of the time books and the quotations and all these different things are screwed up. There's things on both sides of this modern Bible translation controversy that are screwed up, and I think there's a conspiracy. So am I going to play to one side or the other? Am I going to be like, oh no, it's my job to sit here and prove King James onlyism? Is it my job to sit here and prove, that Mark Ward and James White or whoever are correct? No, I'm looking for the truth. And I think that there's truth on both sides. There's truth laying on the ground in the middle aisle that needs to be picked back up. And if it turns out that the entire reason that King James onlyism even exists is to safeguard the Rosicrucian codes that were seated in the King James Bible, then that needs to be known. Are we going to find it out from a Rosicrucian scholar? Are we going to find out from a Francis Bacon scholar? Probably they would be more than willing to say that, but I wouldn't really trust them anyways. So there's a lot to consider. Like I said, I just thought about it the first time today. So, with that being said, just thinking out loud. Okay, so you accept that there's stuff going on. How do we defeat it? Like I said, prayer and a well-educated public. And we're going to be dealing with some of that education that is needed tonight. I hope I've been doing better on my vocal fry. Let me know in the comments what you think so far. Resources that we're going to be throwing your way involve a lot of weird stuff. Unless you are really wanting to dive deep, I wouldn't necessarily recommend following up on all of these links. But be prepared to think outside of the box if you're going to pursue this rabbit, because its hole is nearby. and it's going to require a dive. Lucifer Dethroned is the first that we're going to be reading from tonight. Pages 329 to 333, which is Appendix 1, the Satanic Calendar. You can actually get something similar from Ken Johnson's books. The first one that I would recommend would be, and it's in the description as well, The Ancient Origins of Modern Holidays. And then Lucifer Dethroned, pages 334 to 340, is Appendix 2. Signs of Possible Abuse is the name of that appendix. You can check out our website, where we're going to be developing this thought further on its own page in the future. Our website is BibleVersionConspiracy.com, and the link's in the description for that. All of these links, everything I mentioned in this video, is going to be in the description, and it's in the description now. So even if you're watching this as a co-conspirator and you're watching us live, it's there. It's there for you. You're welcome. And if you are interested in watching all of our live streams a week before anybody else does, and seeing all the bumps and bruises and getting involved in the after show, which needs a really cool name, please consider that Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. And join our co-conspiracy membership, or just go there and check it out and see if the benefits are worth $7 a month to you. We're going live with Nick Sayers down in Australia, mate. And we're going to be talking about the Bible version conspiracy. What else? All right. So join us for that. That'll be live tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Lucifer Dethroned, our own website, Pen Tracks. Pen, like you write with a pen, and tracks like a bunny rabbit leaves in the snow, .org or .com. Anyways, it is Fritz Springmeier's website. And if you want to buy his book called Bloodlines of the Illuminati, you can do that there. I know Kent Hovind recommended that book for a long time. I don't know if he still does. I don't know. You guys can also go to a really interesting ministry. He's got some kind of far out teachings. I don't endorse everything that he says, obviously, but I will say that if you're dealing with Illuminati, MK Ultra type stuff, you're probably going to want to hit up Daniel Duvall. He's the head of bridemovement.com, which is Bride Ministries' website. He offers the Discovering Truth with Daniel Duvall podcast. Sometimes he seems a little, not necessarily fake, but kind of plastic. So it's, it's kind of hard to tell. Just basically, a grain of salt maybe sometimes. Bride Ministries Institute, Bride Ministries Church, free prayer resources, weekly online community groups, conferences, and other outreaches, including strategic assistance to survivors, very strategic assistance to survivors of satanic ritual abuse, SRA, and government-sponsored mind control projects. He specializes in this, and I believe also Fritz Springmeier is good at this as well. I'd love to have Wesley Douglas on here sometime, because he could probably mention some more people than just this. Daniel Duvall's website, this is still quoting from them. Oh, you didn't know we were quoting from them? I'm sorry. All right, we're quoting from them. Our vision is to promote unity in the body of Christ worldwide and assist in the creation and development of sheep nations. Now, I believe what he means when he says that is, like the body of Christ kind of sheep nations, not, being a sheep like a normie or whatever. So If you want to listen to an interview with Dan Duvall, I would highly recommend the Confessionals episode. You can go to theconfessionalspodcast.com. There's a link for this down in the description, like I said. Episode 522, Uncovering CIA Satanic Ritual Abuse, is the name of the episode. And also, you don't necessarily want to listen to it with your kids. And if you're a kid, check this kind of stuff out with your parents, please. If you're under 20, I highly recommend checking this out with your parents. IlluminateTheDarkness.com. Jessie Shezboltar, I believe is her last name. C is in cat, Z is in zebra, E is in elephant, B is in boy, O is in otter, T is in Tom, A is in apple, R is in Roger. Jessie's ministry, this is from her website. Jessie's ministry focuses on veterans, survivors of SRA and sexual abuse, the Netherlands, and whistleblowers who risk their lives to tell their truths. We provide educational videos, teaching, training, anointing, and prayer. If you want to listen to an interview with her, that would be the Confessionals episode 532, called The Mothers of Darkness. Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler have co-authored some books. I've only heard a few interviews with Fritz, and I do not have any of their books. He comes highly recommended from a friend who I've mentioned, Wesley, and I've been favorably impressed with what I have seen from Fritz Springmeier. His interview with, this isn't in the description, but he had an interview with, who's that guy with like Skywatch TV and all that? Timothy Alberino. He had an interview with him that I listened to that I enjoyed. Tony Merkel, I would highly recommend him. He is the, I guess you could call him CEO of the Confessionals Podcast. He interviews people on their paranormal experiences. I am a member of his podcast, and I listen to as many episodes as I can. I'm pretty sure I also have Spray Arm hooked, so you're welcome, Tony. He might end up becoming a member, and that'll be another $7 a month for you. All right, so there's a couple of older guys, too, that I want to mention. Al Bielek, who was reportedly a time traveler. He's got a lot of crazy things that he can bring to the table and to your perception of these kind of things. It's absolutely mind-numbing, mind-blowing. It's just like the stuff that he talks about. He talks about some crazy sounding claims, that's for sure. And he started me down the path of paranoia in college. When I listened to his stuff, I believe it was during my commute back from college. Ted Gunderson also was an FBI special agent in Los Angeles, and I can't say that I remember any of his material. He died in 2011, and he is apparently one of the most widely recognized experts on SRA. There are some other people that I would also like to mention. Joanna Michelson, who authored The Beautiful Side of Evil. Rebecca Brown, who authored He Came to Set the Captives Free, a guide to recognizing and fighting the attacks of Satan, which is in the occult. Kathy O'Brien, who authored The Trance, all caps, The Transformation of America. True Life Story of a Mind Control Slave, and that was recommended to me by Fritz Springmeier to replace a book that we'll be mentioning in a moment by Lauren Stratford. More on her in a moment. And Kathy O'Brien's website is trance-formation.com. Juliet M. Engel MD, author of Sparky, Surviving Sex Magic. She's also recommended. She had an episode with the Confessionals. I don't remember what the name of it was, but I think I might have put it in the description. If not, it might come up with the keywords that I put down there. Oh, let's see. This is from Amazon about the author. Juliet M. Engel was born to a family of intelligence operatives and initiated into the CIA's newly established Monarch program in 1955 at the age of 6. Long after surviving sex magic, she ran the Angel Coalition in Moscow, an underground railroad that rescued and repatriated, I believe is how that's pronounced, child sex trafficking survivors for 10 years. So she's kind of a folk hero among them. Lauren Stratford comes last on our list for obvious reasons, if you know anything about Lauren Stratford. She's the author of Satan's Underground, The Extraordinary Story of One Woman's Escape, 1988. We recommend it with a caveat. It is horribly disturbing. And later on, she also claimed to be a Holocaust survivor. I have my theories about why she would say that, and I don't doubt the story as given in her book. It seems to check out. It agrees with a lot of the information that I've learned from other people. And if she did claim to be a Holocaust survivor, there are reasons that she may have done that. She may have been programmed to discredit herself. That's a possibility. She may have been simply referring to the fact that she did survive a Holocaust of a life, I'll tell you that. And she may have also been replaced by someone or something else, something that you don't see very often mentioned. Oh, what are they called? They may be a good explanation for Grandma in the cave. We might talk about that later on. I can't remember what the actual name for it is, but I heard it just the other day, and I was like, oh, I think I know what that is. Anyways, here we go. A little bit of cultural context before we go jumping in to the list. Michelle Smith and Lawrence Pasder, authors of Michelle Remembers in 1980. It kind of more or less sparked and was also just a big player in the entire satanic panic of the 80s. The events in their book took place in British Columbia, very Roman Catholic in its bent, along the lines of Zach King and Lauren Stratford. In its experiences that it recounts, Satan speaks in there in bad rhymes, and Michelle is saved by Jesus and Mary, who show up in the middle of a ritual. That sounds like that situation may have been staged. I have not read the book, but this is basically a synopsis. It's very controversial and has a lot of inconsistencies. More on this later. Two inconsistencies stand out. First, that nobody could hear her screams in a residential area. Secondly, that she retained no memory of the regressed memories when she was interrogated by the FBI. So basically, Lawrence was the one that stepped in and gave her account as she remembered it during their sessions, but not when she was interrogated. So they basically cut the interview off because it's like, no, we want to talk to the lady that's actually making these claims, not you, Mr. Pasder. So There are some reasons that, honestly, I didn't know anything about this book until a few days ago. I watched a video on YouTube talking about the book. The lady was very critical of it, and there was a lot of inconsistencies that they pointed out. Those were two of the inconsistencies that I was like, I don't have a direct answer for those. Every other inconsistency, I was like, well, if what everybody else claims is true, then they can do this, and they can do this, and they can do this. And all of these things actually make sense if you know apparently what these people are capable of. So, I don't doubt Michelle remembers. I don't doubt it. I don't say I believe it, but I don't doubt it. If you want to ask me questions about that, join us for the next live stream. You can become a member if you want to, or right now, currently, we are doing a live Q&A session every final Friday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, this is one of the key books behind the Satanic Panic, like we already mentioned. It has its own Wikipedia article. We highly caution, and I would caution based on the book as well, highly caution against regression therapy, where they hypnotize you and they try to get you to remember things that happened to you in your past, things that you don't remember, possibly things that didn't even happen if there's suggestion going on. It depends. Regression therapy is a weird subject. First, you can be coached into having false memories, and second, you may not actually want to know what happened. Similarities between the stories that were brought forward to the FBI during this period of time, the similarity between these stories caused the FBI to suspect a script of some kind and to doubt the victims, if victims they were. Apparently, Sigmund Freud had similar situations going on when he started out. I don't remember if he was doing regression therapy or not. I'm pretty sure he was. And when he started hearing the wild, wacky, evil claims that were coming out of the mouths of mostly women that were in, upper and upper middle class residents, they were, basically well-bred or whatever you want to say. When he heard these crazy stories coming out of their mouths, he was like, okay, this is done. This can't be happening. So he doubted it too. So this stuff does have its place in history. And he shouldn't have done that. In my opinion, he shouldn't have doubted what he heard. There may have been a script. There may have been implanted memories that went to the same people over and over again. There's a lot of possibilities. I mean, rituals, there is obviously a script, so there's obviously something happening. And obviously there's going to be similarities. The Satanic Panic grew from a conspiracy to a movement to a moral panic. And there were many mistakes that were made. Same thing with the Salem witch trials. Many mistakes that were made, and we need to learn from that history. I should probably do a live stream on Salem as well, but I don't necessarily have that history nailed down as best as I could. Richard Beck wrote a book called We Believe the Children, A Moral Panic in the 80s. It details how most look back at the Satanic Panic and how they view the kind of information that we'll be sharing. It is important to be aware of what critics of the Satanic Panic and people that ridicule it, how they look at it, so that we don't fall into the hysteria and make the same mistakes. There's a calendar similar to this in Ken Johnson's book, the ancient origins of modern holidays. The reason why he brings that into there, is to show that there is a pagan festival for like every day of the year. So if you wanted to associate a pagan festival with a modern holiday, then you could easily do that. So here we go. The Satanic calendar. Let me get out my red pen. Major feasts called Sabbats. So what very common to hear that when it comes to Sabbath or Sabbat. So I'm not sure how much Jewish influence is actually in there, but common to both Wicca and Satanism are as follows. So you guys can read all of this on your own time if you want. This is basically times when you want to be aware of things going on. So Imbolc or Candlemas, the vernal equinox, Beltane, the symbol, this right here means really watch out. So in satanic covens, the feasts which involve the at least animal sacrifice are marked with this. Those which involve human sacrifice and are especially dangerous are marked with a double obelisk. And the triple double obelisk, which is here, is really watch out. So this one's at least animal, because you have that symbol right there. The vernal equinox, Beltane, or Walpurgisnacht, is double. Midsummer's Eve. This is when you are going to be, if you are conceived in one of these things, then that's going to be like 9 months before your birthday, thereabouts. So that may help. So I'm not sure why this should probably be a double obelisk. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called, is double obelisks. Harvest home, equinox, human, must be male. Samhain, that's All Hallows Eve, triple, so be very careful. Yule is also a triple, which is around Christmas. That's December 23rd. Oh, ideally a Christian or the child of a Christian. So yeah. And let's see. Okay, specialized. And you guys can go back and read that. We're trying to move through the history section as quickly as we can. Thelemic festivals, which are going to be involved with the cult of Set and Aleister Crowley. Equinox of the Gods, Feast of Sothis, Feast of the Prophet and his Bride, the Feast of Tehuntai, Crowley Mass, which is basically Aleister Crowley's birthday. There's no set celebration for that. That's October 12th. Gail Ripplinger, just so you guys know, it doesn't really matter, I suppose. Gail Ripplinger was born on October 10th. So, if you get a chance, wish her happy birthday. We usually send her a thank box card. So if you're interested in filling that out, let us know. Join the Facebook group Friends of Gail Ripplinger, and you will get notified about all of the cards that we send her way. You can send a personalized message, photograph, video, GIFs, and gifts. So if you want to send her a little bit of money or whatever to show her how much you appreciate her, that's available through our oh our Facebook page, Friends of Gail Ripplinger, and I'm also planning eventually in the future to post those on our Buy Me a Coffee page as well, so you guys can be aware of that. Miscellaneous satanic feasts. The Satanist's own birthday is not commonly celebrated. Major Roman Catholic feast days, so Easter, Good Friday, Christmas, St. John's Night. A sacrifice of ideally a Christian minister, a Christian ex-Satanist, or the child of a Christian. Okay. 13th and 31st day, if one of a month. So the 13th and the 31st, obviously, because they're switched. 3-1 and 1-3. I was born on a 31st day, August 31st. Also, Friday the 13th, of course. Not necessarily physically dangerous magic. Not necessarily dangerous. Saint Winebald's Day, which is going to be a scary time. Satanic Revels. Now, I thought that a single obelisk... Let me go reread the symbol obelisk real quick. Okay, so satanic covens and feasts which involve at least animal sacrifice are marked. Okay, that. But human sacrifice are supposed to be marked that way. Okay, so it's probably mismarked. I don't know why they even did that if they weren't going to be consistent with it. Saint, whatever that name is. Animal. Yeah, okay. Let's maybe not read that. That'd be this part right here. You go right ahead. Grand Climax. Female Christian, 1 to 25 years of age. That's around these dates. Demon Revels. Feast of the Beast. Host of Midnight. Sounds really bad. Yeah, that is really bad. Okay, so November 4th. Okay, so that sounds very Crowleyan right there. Because he claimed that he would, chop the people up or whatever at Climax, which is bad. And December 24th. Any age. And a lot of the time, these are actually associated not because there was some deep pagan reason for it, but also just because it's a Christian holiday. So they tend to do a lot of, blasphemy kind of things then. So their rituals will adopt a lot of Christian elements or Catholic elements. All right, Appendix 2. Here are most of the little known or often missed symptoms of survivors of SRA, satanic ritualistic abuse, along with some symptoms that are fairly well known in the therapeutic community. Obviously, 1 or 2 of these is not enough to arouse suspicion. Obviously, this is supposed to be obvious. But if there are many of them, they bear investigation. This is also going to be helpful to your police officers and whatever else. So thank you, Bill, and thank you all of the other authors that deal with this subject matter. You're putting light into a crazy, unbelievable place, and we appreciate it. There's only one other possibility with these kind of things, the actual abuse testimonies that they bring forward, there's only one other possibility if they're not true, in my mind, that they are a shadowy operation where there is a memory that is implanted in somebody's mind, much like a UFO abduction can be implanted in somebody's mind by some kind of, dark project or what have you. But the thing is that it's covering up something worse. Not necessarily worse abuse, but think about this. You have the oh, right. What they usually say about demons or whatever, that their purpose is to keep you away from gnosis. So they're basically guard dogs that keep you from knowing something. So if there is something to be known, like say an MK Ultra project or the secret space program or whatever else is being covered up, it could likely be covered up by something where you're like, oh, wow, I'm so glad that we finally got to the bottom of that and rooted out this unbelievable thing that is so horrible. Or we're not even going to investigate this because the claims are just too radical and stupid, and these people are obviously deranged. So, in other words, they've got you either way, and you're not going to know the truth. Regression therapy may be bringing back memories that aren't actually memories. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes it is, I think, a good thing, but it needs to be done very, very carefully. I'll tell you what, and I don't want to be involved with it at all, even though I am curious. All these may become more accurate during key ritual periods. So, in other words, if you see those dates that we've mentioned before, go back and check those out, or they're you can buy the book by Bill Schneblin from the internet. So I believe the link for that is down in the description for you guys as well. So this is going to be around certain times in the year. Physiological body symptoms. Acute photosensitivity. So in other words, like you don't like bright lights and stuff like that. Body chemistry anomalies, changes in blood type. So you are one type of blood and now you're a different type of blood. Not because you got a transfusion, but for some other reason. This is supposed to be impossible, but it happens. Right side epilepsy may be indicative of serious possession. And it's also been closely associated with the thing that gets people pushed off of YouTube these days. Odd tics in hands and fingers. So like weird movements and stuff. Unconscious signing of curses sometimes. So like if your hands do weird stuff or whatever, then, or if you know somebody whose hands do weird things and they can't control it. Overweight or eating disorders. That's interesting, considering how many overweight people are in the IFB. If you're IFB and you're overweight, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Strange addictive behaviors, cravings for blood, compulsive, that, etc. Headaches of unknown etiology, I guess, cause, muscular or genital disorders. Marks to look for on anatomy. Unusual, exotic, or hard to explain scarring. Hairline scars on the sternum. Scars on perineum of male. Scars on abdomen, often in occult designs. So in other words, this is your scar section. Oh, scars on the left wrist or forearm. Surgically pierced labia in female, scars in inner thighs, especially males, cuts or punctures on neck, especially over carotid artery, blood or trauma in private areas, loss of virginity in girls, unusual soreness in boys. Like I said, and he is wording this stuff very carefully enough to give you information. We know what this means, and I like how he's wording it. He's being genteel. Physical exam by pediatrician reveals unusually relaxed sphincter or scarring, missing parts, especially parts of fingers, missing or supernumerary nipples. So, like if you have a nipple growing on the bottom of your foot, that's happened to people before. Boys missing first phalanges of thumb and index finger, so that would be like there and there. Girls missing left ring finger down to bottom phalange, so that'd be like most of your finger. Missing little finger on left hand, that would be indicating in either sex. Small, obscure tattoos in unusual or out-of-the-way places, such as the crown of the head, the palm of the hand, the solar plexus or sternum, the pubic region, or above the coccyx, which is your tailbone. Behavioral among children, ages 4 to 9. Now, up to this point, you can see why this has not been subject matter for children. It's hardly subject matter for anybody, but we need to be aware of these things because they're actually happening, and when we see something like this crop up, we should probably start asking questions. And also be careful of who we turn to in these situations and what we say and when we say things, because a child's life may be at stake. Like I said, tonight's subject is not pleasant. But there are a lot of people that don't have Bill Schneblin's book. There's a lot of people that haven't heard his testimonies, even still now. There is just so much. And it when the book falls apart, hopefully this YouTube video will still be there and people will be able to reference it. Now this is ages 4 to 9. This is unusual activity for children in this age range. Concerning sexuality. Now this is not necessarily always just a sign of SRA. This can also be a sign of just abuse and trauma in this age range. So it's not necessarily the really graphic stuff, but it's still horrifying, and it needs to stop. I'd also like to mention we'll probably get to that. It's predator poachers from Rumble. They apparently are doing a good thing, and they've apparently busted about 600 pedophiles, which is awesome, and apparently they're doing a very good thing. So check them out, predator poachers. Thank you, Charles. All right, so concerning sexuality, children 4 to 9. Talking about sex or using age-inappropriate terms, or understanding of sexual activity or anatomy through drawings, etc. So if you see them drawing different things, that shows that they're conscious of it, and they shouldn't be at that age. touches others sexually, acts provocative or seductive, and that can be a sign of your your Sparky book with sex magic and stuff. That starts at a young age, those projects. Oh, let's see. So, and there's going to be a lot of this, I think, going on in the IFB movement, possibly, because there's a lot of blackmail that goes on. And if, if that kind of stuff is going on with a kid outside of somebody else, it's going to be easy to get them to blackmail a pastor or youth leader or whatever. Fearful of anyone handling or washing their parts, which is natural. Not for anyone, of course, because, like, we give our kids baths and stuff, but if they're, like, terrified of anybody getting near them, even their parents and stuff, then that's concerning. Using terms for body parts not normally used in the family. So if the family doesn't use a term and they hear them using a term that they haven't used, that can be very concerning, that somebody else has used it and they've heard it and they've come to associate it with it, and nobody else should be talking to them about those kind of things. So fears of getting undressed at bedtime or bath time or bedtime. Compulsively that, even in public. Girls claim to have been married or betrothed or going to have a baby. So it's a thing with kids, like Abigail. My wife has been pregnant multiple times, with Abigail being aware of it, because it's kind of hard to hide, So that is normal behavior, like I said. All right, so something else that you'd want to watch out for. So this is part B, bathroom behavior. This is coming from the standpoint of a medical doctor. Dr. Bill Schneblin was he was very very well versed in therapy, dealing with these different kinds of problems. So this is not just like, a pastor writing down all these things just because he was writing them down. This is coming from a guy that dealt a lot with these kinds of problems, saw a lot of these kinds of problems, dealt with. He was a I believe his doctorate is in herbal medicine because of his past. So this is what this is being written in the standpoint from the standpoint of. And like I said, this is a public service thing that we're doing. It needs to be. We need to be aware of it, because it is in our churches. It does affect our lives. It is different places. I have heard too many testimonies of people that come forward and they're like, this stuff is real. To be where I can't sit back and just be like, I'm never going to talk about this because people are going to be uncomfortable. There are children that need help, and the only people that can help them are people that are aware. Complaints of burning or pain in private areas when being washed. Tells parent that someone undressed them or exposed themselves to them. Tells parent that somebody poked them in their bottom, i.e. private areas. Describes accurately sexual acts between self or others, or between other adults, children, or animals. If you can accurately describe those kind of things as a kid, that's very concerning. It's also concerning because you're probably learning about them from a children's book at your public school. So, probably a good idea to not be sending your kids there. fears the bathroom. And it's normal for kids to be nervous about using the big toilet because they feel like they're going to fall down in. But like we said earlier, one or two of these things don't add up to a great big huge thing. What does happen is you add a bunch of them together and you're just like concerned because a lot of these things are starting to add up and they're abnormal behavior. It's something needs to happen. And you need to know who to turn to, and I would highly recommend checking out those links in the link up section in the description. Refusal to bathe in front of their parent, preoccupied with over cleanliness of body, changes underwear unnecessarily. So like 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 scrubbing and but hypersensitive, not because they have a fear of germs or something, but because they maybe just feel dirty. Unusual fear of drowning in bath, but will take a shower. So our kids are perfectly happy to have a bath. I don't usually let them because I'm usually, trying to hurriedly get them clean and we usually shower them or whatever. But if they're if they have an unusual, and sometimes, kids are, or sometimes they're nervous or whatever. But if they have an unusual fear of drowning, maybe they've been drowned before. Or maybe they've had an almost drowning experience. Thank you. It does happen that people accidentally, almost drown themselves. Unusual fear in drowning in bath, but will take shower. Unusual elimination practices, such as refuses to go, or refuses to wipe him or herself, or goes outdoors or in public parts of the house. So if you're like just going to the bathroom wherever, sometimes that happens with kids, but if you're 9 years old and you're pooping in the middle of the living room, you could be autistic, yes. Something else might be wrong. Talks about eating human waste or actually does it. Autistic kids sometimes will play with poop. But if your kid is normal and they talk about eating human waste, then it's like, no, something is definitely going on. That's not good. There's Carl. I didn't think you'd be joining us tonight, buddy. I'm sorry, there's stuff all over your bed. When pedophile poachers, no, predator poachers, when they're when they're posing as a young person or whatever, then they will very often get pictures of people's poop. Problems with doctors or dentist offices. Now, this also is normal. But if you have an inordinate fear of doctors or nurses, so like you're obviously terrified because you see somebody that's dressed up as a doctor or a nurse. You talk about bad doctors doing things to them or giving them bad shots, etc. Anti-vax community, that can happen. But if if there's stuff that's not coming up in the rhetoric of the family and stuff like this, and you're seeing obviously it's gonna be clear what is going on, especially if the kid gets his shots and everything and is paranoid about something that may have happened to him. It'll be obvious. Talks about bad dentists drilling or hurting their teeth without anesthetics. More than unusual fear of undressing in front of doctors, or fears about having to parade about in front of others naked. So that would be a pretty clear sign of abuse. Behave sexually provocative with doctor or nurse during exam. or appears to expect sexual contact with them. Talks about bad doctors or surgeons opening them up and putting things such as bombs, bugs, spiders, needles, or pins, etc., inside them. This can happen where you actually, like, even, different experiences, you can get something that is inserted into you. They're called implants. Emotional and mental problems. Hyperactive and violent, that happens. But I mean, like, if you're like violent, like if you're 9 years old and you're just completely dark and sick, there's something going on that's really wrong. Labile, I'm not sure how that, easily changeable emotions, or strangely unemotional, called flat affect in therapists. Dyslexia, which is common among people as well, or other learning disorders, especially reading words or letters backwards. That can be a sign, but that's just the definition of dyslexia. So it's just like one more thing that would add to the pyre. Displays over anxious behavior, grinding teeth, nail biting, rocking, uncontrolled crying. Happens with kids. Rebellious, obviously, that happens with kids, but it can be something that indicates stuff. Fearful, clinging, regressing into baby-like behavior inappropriate for age. Night terrors, sweats, frequent or horrific nightmares. That can also be a sign that there's something going on really wrong in your house, or it can be a mold problem or whatever. Indulges in self-destructive behavior, head banging, self-scarring, accident prone, etc. So accident prone can obviously be something more benign, but that depends on the accident. Thinks she is bad, evil, stupid, or worthy of punishment all the time. That would be a definite sign right there. So that was one thing with Lauren Stratford, is that her mother, who was possessed as all get out, she would actually have Lauren stand in front of a mirror and repeat after her, that she was evil and stupid and bad and unworthy and worthy of punishment and all these other kind of things. So that is apparently a fairly well-known mind control technique where you can just get somebody in a spot where they're helpless. Problems with eating. Talks about eating or drinking blood, animal parts, human body parts, or waste. Eating disorders. Vomiting, binging, etc. Now, these are all, I believe, still in the young children category. Refuses to eat. Eating disorders. That's interesting. Like bulimia, I think. No, that's different. I don't remember. We talked earlier about the overweight aspect of things. So you're going to come in there with eating disorders. Sorry, I'm going to try to get more breath behind this. Whew. That's going to come in with your eating disorders and your vomiting and stuff like this. And binging. Refuses to eat certain foods, especially underdone meat or bloody meat or whatever. So not necessarily that you need to force your kids to try to eat meat that is undercooked. That's not safe. It's not good for the kids. It can leave all kinds of parasites in there that you could have real problems with. So obviously don't do that. But if they're presented with it, like at a family gathering or something like this, and they're like, there's things that that are unusual behavior that you'd want to think of. Refuses to eat or drink certain colored foods, red food or red drinks, or brown or yellow drinks like apple juice or something like this. Obsessed with the idea that food is either poisoned or drugged. Acts as if parents might be trying to poison or drug. So this is one thing that goes through your mind as a kid. As far as I'm aware, nothing ever happened to me. But when I was younger, I would always be like, I wonder if, I was a conspiracy theorist even back then. I'd be like, boy, I hope that this person's, my actual brother or whatever, and I'm not, he doesn't have something in here in this drink that that I asked him to bring me or whatever. It's something that goes through your mind. I don't think anything ever happened to me, but I probably watched too much TV. So sensory issues also can come in with different types of foods, neurodivergence, autism, and stuff like this. Color association problems. So express dislike for certain colors. That's obviously something that can happen, especially black, red, or green. But sometimes you're scared of those colors. If you want to dress in black all the time for no reason, there's your goth scene. Talks about being in rooms painted entirely red, entirely black, entirely green, or other odd colors when such rooms are not known to the parents. Talks about seeing colors floating around people or seeing colored lights. So things like that can happen in your household just because there's something going on in your household. Or you're starting to see auras because you're being trained through, what is that they call it? Like trauma-based mind control or whatever, where you're actually being trained in clairvoyance and things like this. So if you start seeing things like that, it can be because there's some kind of program going on. Oh, talks about seeing colors floating around people or seeing colored lights. Talks about liturgical use of black, red, or green when they're like liturgical, like churchly use of black, red, or green when their normal church experience does not contain such rituals. Multiple personality or dissociative dysfunction disorder. That's where you're being split into different personalities. If it's along the lines of, what was that guy's name? Mangala. I believe his specific number of personalities that he would try to fracture people into was 169, if I'm not mistaken. Fritz Springmeier talks about that. Memory blackouts. And it happens, obviously, you forget things. But if you don't remember your childhood whatsoever, or if you're like, I believe it was the lady from Sparky, if I'm not mistaken. All she could remember, like almost nothing from her childhood. And when she was asked to draw what she thought of when she thought of her mother, she only drew a hand. That was indicative of something going on, and her therapist had a lot on her hands. All right, sexually addictive behavior, especially that. Little or no memories of childhood. Self-mutilation behavior, suicidal ideation. Extreme fear of authority figures, police, clergy, or doctors. Sometimes these people will actually masquerade as police, clergy, or doctors. And they will actually be trying to instill fear in them of these different types of people. It's very interesting. Acute nightmares, insomnia, and I would add a note to this, except in like certain positions, if there is a very specific position that you or your child has to be in order to fall asleep, like a very specific way, like if your arm has to be up and your leg has to be bent and your head has to be facing a certain direction or whatever in order to fall asleep, that could be concerning. Narcolepsy, falling asleep at odd times or uncontrollably. That shows that something's going on during the midnight hour that you're not getting sleep. Or there could be something else going on. All kinds of medical things that need to be checked out and ruled out. Abrupt changes in behavior or mood, often diagnosed as bipolar, but may be caused by triggers. Here's some other signs. Men walking dogs in unusual places, such as the deep woods. That's from Satan's Underground by Lauren Stratford. Like, oh, what on earth is he walking a dog out here for? We're like miles from civilization or what have you. Chances are that there's something going on out in the woods that involves a dog and a child, possibly. So just be suspicious. Check out the book. Be aware of some things. And like I said, be aware. Be vigilant. Makeshift beds in basements. That's from Satan's Underground. Reciting I'm no good in mirrors. This was a part in Satan's Underground that I was just like, stand up, stand up. Very highly disturbing book. Anyways. Girl sitting uncomfortably through impromptu home inspection. So police officers showed up to inspect her home in the middle of everything, and she was just bleeding out into the couch, and she didn't stand up the whole time the police officer was there. And it was just like, ask her to stand up. She's terrified of her mother. Please ask her to stand up. Bust this case wide open. It didn't happen. And the rest of her life was a living hell. Unreasonable fear and hatred of nations, patriotism, religious leaders and figures, etc. So, where you're like, I hate Jesus and stuff like that, sometimes the reason that is because during a ceremony, somebody was dressed as Jesus and claimed to be the Jesus from the Bible and did something to that person. That has happened. Abduction and MK Ultra-esque programs, which of course they claim that it ended in 73, but this comes from the Confessionals episode Discovering MK Ultra, which is a members only episode, number 241. A Bigfoot, quote unquote, or other entities showing up in bedrooms or basements, followed by missing time. Difficulty sleeping, especially except in very specific positions. Sometimes these positions are revealed when the insomnia starts during the waking moments of the beginning of that insomnia. That's from the Confessionals episode interviewing Holly, which I don't remember the exact name of that episode. I believe it's members only. Sometimes a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, which is having unexplained pain that just can't be identified, and when it gets thrown in the fibromyalgia, your diagnosis is basically just thrown into the fibromyalgia bin because they got no idea what's going on. That can be associated with it. Grandparents or parents associated with the Nazis or Project Paperclip, or possibly the Manhattan Project, different things like this. Which is where sometimes Ruckman comes into my mind, because if I'm not mistaken, his father worked on the Manhattan Project. And that just kind of raises my conspiracy antenna. Children taking trips to Peru for unknown reasons. Discovering MK Ultra. It's the name of that members-only episode by the Confessionals. Peru seems to come in a lot. Appearance of abuser. Culprits are often described as looking like a typical biker or Hell's Angel. You can check that out in Schneblin and also Satan's Underground. Abusers can be part of all walks of life. Many of the people that have been busted by predator poachers, the majority of them have been truckers. They've also busted engineers. They've busted all walks of life. It is important not to limit suspects based on appearance or occupation. To limit or to extend accusation, because a lot of the time they just look like that way because that's how their peers look. Realistic and often very dark dreams from the Confessionals members only discovering MK Ultra, that can be a sign as well. And also going to a school, having gone to a school maybe in the French Quarter of New Orleans, near where Ruckman met the priest. Remember from his his testimony about that in the French Quarter of New Orleans, where there was a school with a elegant French name called the World of Children. And if there's a lot of really weird testing that goes on, like testing mental abilities and memories and all sorts of, lots and lots and lots of like puzzles and tests and stuff like this, and game associated tests, there's a lot of that there. And it didn't make the list. I'm kind of surprised. Maybe it ended up somewhere else. I'm not sure. If a child has an extensive knowledge, especially of chemistry, that can be a sign of being part of a program. That's from Discovering MK Ultra, members only, episode 241 of the Confessionals with Tony Merkel. There is no memory. Like if you're like, hey, I have no memory of SRA, but I recognize a lot of these signs to the point where I am disturbed, don't go reading into it, please. Save yourself the headache. But if you're honestly like, actually, Joseph, you started out the list and I was like, yeah, this and this and that. And then you're just like, but wait. But that one's big. And no, wow. It may be worth going to somebody like Bride Ministries or somebody else like that and asking them, hey, would you be able to talk with me for a little bit and help me try to figure this out? Perceived paranormal abduction scenarios are often implanted memories associated with black programs like MK Ultra and the SRA phenomenon. So if you are like, hey, I remember being abducted by an alien or something, then chances are that could be a screen memory. And if you're experiencing a lot of these different things, that may be what's happening. Is this just satanic panic? Aren't all these witnesses just lying to get attention? I wish they were. I really hope that they are. But I've heard too many first-hand accounts of people who have experienced these things to think that they're all lying to get attention. And also, what kind of attention are you actually going to get? If you guys have any questions, please type them out in the chat, and we'll get to those as soon as we can. If you're interested in the after show live stream, please let me know in the chat. How do they literally get away with murder? Often the abuser will purposefully work in inconsistencies using disguises and other contrivances into their narrative to make witnesses unbelievable and even doubt themselves. So like, oh yeah, John Smith or whatever, he did this to me. What does John Smith look like? He looks like this and this and that. Oh yeah, and he had brown hair. and somebody else comes forward as having the exact same experience with this other person, and they collaborate, or they interrogate them separately, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it was John Smith." Okay, it was John Smith, and what did he look like? This and that. Oh well, he was fat and short, and he was bald, or something. And it's like, okay, well, your stories don't line up, because you're saying this and you're saying this completely different. Everything is exactly the same except this point. They work in inconsistencies sometimes that way. They will make you think that you are somewhere that you're not, to make it sound unbelievable that you could possibly even be there. Often the abuser will purposefully work inconsistencies in using disguises and other contrivances. Bodies are ceremonially buried and then they're dug back up. They don't leave them in the ground. They're dug up for more complete disposal. Sometimes they'll be disposed of by burning, disposed of in water, bodies of water, or cannibalized. Other inconsistencies have more bizarre explanations, which we may go into further detail on in another video. One of the things is healing factors, because some people apparently have bizarre abilities to be able to heal. And if something happens to you, something is done to you, this person can just make it look like it never happened. Joanna Michelson talks about things like that. There have been at least one, probably a few different people that talk about these things that have been interviewed on the Confessionals. The one that we mentioned, Discovering MK Ultra, that one mentioned this sort of thing at the World of Children Institute, or whatever it was, in New Orleans. Just all sorts of crazy, bizarre things that go on. And I hope that this video has helped to shed some light, maybe into your past, maybe into your life, maybe into something. If you have any further questions, you can reach out to me via email. My email address is right there. And I would definitely recommend checking out some of those links in the description if you are concerned. And start weighing your options for who to contact, whether you're dealing with some kind of possession scenario, or if you're dealing with abuse or what have you. Make sure that you can trust the people that you're going to turn to. Don't just go, oh, well, I just have this number and I'm just going to call the abuse hotline or whatever. And it may not be the answer. It may not be the answer, because you don't necessarily know where this person is going. You're just kind of throwing them into the arms of the state or what have you, and bye. Hope everything works out for you. You don't know where they're going to be ended. You don't know where they're going to end up. You don't know where that person's going to take them. You don't know if that person is even actually associated with the state. It could be somebody impersonating. That has happened before. I have had this on the back of my mind for a long time, and I'm glad to have gotten through some of it. There may be a part 2 at some point. Nigel Graddon. Let's bring this back full circle. Nigel Graddon believes some interesting things. Let me read the back of this book just so you have that. And we'll deal with more of it at some other point. A new twist on an old mystery. This book offers evidence for the first time that those responsible for the Whitechapel murders were members of a hit team associated with a centuries-old European confederacy dedicated to human sacrifice. This was first mooted by Jim Keith in his 1993 book, Secret and Suppressed, and then corroborated in the private papers of a Monsignor who carried out intelligence work for Pope Pius X in a run-up to the outbreak of global conflict in 1914. The priest told of the existence of a Vatican-based cabal of assassins, known to its members by the maxim, "Dead men carry no tales," formed by the infamous bourgeois, that is in alliance with a Teuton occult group formed in the 9th century. It was from within this unholy alliance that assassins traveled to London to carry out the Ripper murders, to solve a sticky problem for the British royal family. That is quoting Keith's Vatican informant. Part of the substantiation for this evidence derives from Joseph Farrell in his book Hess and the Penguins. The evidence also substantiates Keith's informant's astonishing claim that the assassins came together in a conference in Basel in 1897 to put the building blocks together for National Socialism and to prepare the blueprint for the Holocaust. For the first time also, the book substantiates a new line of research into the 19th century highly influential and richly funded Bible revision movement. Evidence suggests that the work of key figures from America and Britain within the movement was associated with the grisly events in London's East End during the 1880s or the 1888's Autumn of Terror. That's the book, Jack the Ripper's New Testament, Occultism and Bible Mania in 1888 by Nigel Graddon. I think it could have been written a lot differently. I certainly would not have written the back cover that way. But I'm not an author. And as soon as I am, you'll be the first to know. Anyways, this, like you said, new line of research and everything. Gail Ripplinger said stuff that nobody else was saying. Not even Ruckman was saying the things that Ripplinger was saying. If you've watched to the end of this video, congratulations. You've listened to a lot. I appreciate you very much. Join us. Resistance is futile, right? Go read your Bible like the devil's after it. Because it truly is a Bible version conspiracy. And I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow at the live stream with Nick Sayers. If you just watch this live, you're part of the reason why we do this. And if you're watching this after the fact, you're also a part of why we're doing this. And I appreciate you all. Read your Bible like the devil's after it, because it truly is a Bible version conspiracy. Have a good night. We'll talk soon.